The Premier League is back! Welcome back to the webcast. The international break is finally closing and we are returning to Premier League action this weekend with a full slate of games. The 2 game weeks before the international break kicked off, we had the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, which had I think a total of 13 games were postponed because of the funeral services and the like there. So we are finally returning after the international break to a full slate of games, and we have some great ones to get into today as we give you our picks for week 9 of the Premier League season. But we have to start off with the international break, and in particular, the United States men's team. Okay, so last week we gave you kind of the introduction into the World Cup, our first episode here on the webcast that described kind of the formatting of the World Cup. And as we get closer and closer to November and the road to Qatar ends up with the World Cup kicking off in the middle of November, we will get you more and more ready for everything that's going on, especially for the men's team. Finally back in the World Cup after missing 2018 in Russia. We are returning. And how are we going to do and get you ready and hyped for that? The greatest sporting competition in the world, the World Cup, happening every 4 years. But these last 2 weeks have consisted of 2 games for the U.S. men's national team in their last prep for the World Cup. So these are the last 2 games, despite them being friendlies and not playing for anything. These are the last 2 games that we will play as a team before we play Wales at the end of November in the first group stage game of the World Cup. So teams usually like to use these games, especially friendlies, to play teams of the caliber of the World Cup. Remember, we talked a little bit about this in last episode, but this is technically the World Cup, but everyone thinks of it as the World Cup, is actually technically called the World Cup Finals because each confederation has a grueling qualification process to get to this stage. So this is the best of all of the different confederations in a tournament. So you can't just play anybody in the world and feel that you've played the good enough competition for the World Cup, which happens in November. So the U.S. had 2 friendlies, one with Japan, who has been a regular in the World Cup since the 90s, the end of the 90s. They have made every World Cup since, and Saudi Arabia, who is in and out over the last couple editions of the World Cup, but both are in 2022 in Qatar. They will be there. And so it was a good kind of test to see, we've gone through the whole qualification in CONCACAF, which is North America, Central America. So your teams like Mexico, Canada, Costa Rica, Honduras, Trinidad, those teams. But it's always good to play teams from other confederations. So in this case, Saudi Arabia and Japan. And so the first game last weekend, Friday against Japan, zero shots on target. Granted, the U.S. had some injuries. This isn't what we predict is going to be the starting lineup. Barely even half of the starting lineup played in these 2 games, but 0 shots on target. Matt Turner played amazing in this game, the goalkeeper for the United States, which really tells you all you need to know about how this game went. Japan absolutely dominating the entire 90 minutes. They won 2-0. It could have been a lot more. The U.S. continue their terrible playing outside of the United States record. And in just 2022, the teams that we have played that are going to Qatar, we have 1 win, 3 losses, and 2 draws against those 6 games. So it is not a good start to that campaign. Actually, I think now it's 1 win, 3 losses, and 3 draws now. So that's not what you want to see heading into a World Cup, but this is a young squad. Friday was terrible. We played again 2 days ago against Saudi Arabia. 0-0 draw there in southern Spain. with Saudi Arabia, who also has their injuries and people missing from who they believe are going to be regular starters in their 3 group matches in Qatar. So both teams were playing that way. The U.S. looked out of shape, no structure, just playing long ball over the top. That resulted in a grand total of 2 shots on target. If that was the way that we thought we could get at Saudi Arabia, then we kept trying and kept failing at it because only 2 shots on target. McKinney and Pulisic both trying to run off of it. Just wasn't, the link up play really wasn't there. In these last 2 games, we saw a lot of balls just given away from the back, from the defensive midfield, just in poor positions that led, especially against Japan, to a lot of Japan opportunities came from us giving the ball away in poor positions. And I think bringing back some players, Robinson, Ream, Musa, bringing those players into the lineup, I expect them to be playing regular minutes if healthy in Qatar. Is going to help kind of settle us down, keep the ball a little bit more, avoid some of those issues that we were seeing in these games. But it was sad to see these 2 games. You don't want to have your 2 tune-up games result in a draw and a loss where you had 2 shots on targets and 0 goals against 2 teams that many people might not even have getting out of their group. And as the U.S., we have the expectation every World Cup that we need to at least make it out of the group. That is a bare minimum for us. The quality that we have, the size of the country, the history that we have, we need to be making it out of the group. But, that's just a quick recap of those 2 games. Definitely pretty poor and sad to see as a U.S. fan, but we're going to get a lot more coverage as we get closer and closer to the World Cup. So stick with us here on the webcast for all of that. But today's episode, like every Wednesday, when the Premier League is up and running, we are doing our Premier League picks. So last week, we only had 7 games. We went 4-3 in last week's edition. Doug carrying us through with 4 out of 4 of his picks correct last week. Sadly, he cannot be here with us today as he is with everyone down in the southern part of the United States, trying to stay safe, and with Hurricane Ian starting to hit the west coast of Florida. So here at the webcast, we're wishing everybody safety during this time, and please stay indoors and be safe. Evacuate if you are told to do so. Definitely a big storm coming there, so please, everyone, be safe. But for us, we will be getting into the picks now for week 9, and we start off with the North London Derby. Tottenham Hotspurs traveling to the Emirates to take on Arsenal, both flying to start the season. Antonio Conte has Tottenham unbeaten through 7. Mikel Arteta still rolling right along with a 3-0 win last week against Brentford. 6 wins out of 7. Their lone loss away to Manchester United. The last 5 meetings between these teams have resulted in the home team picking up all 3 points, whether that is in the Premier League or in the domestic cup competitions. After an international break is always a little bit difficult. Players kind of have to make a transition between playing with the national team to back into the club. This is a early kickoff, 7:30 a.m. here on the East Coast this Saturday. And I think the trend continues. Arsenal pick up all 3 points here. If you are a regular viewer of the webcast, you know that I have been skeptical of Arsenal because I wanted to see them get battle tested. One thing over the last couple of years with Arsenal, from my perspective, is that they can put on good performances and string them together even, but as soon as they hit adversity, they crumble and then they go on a bad spell. This year, we've seen injuries already occur. We've seen they go into tough games and perform well. They're beating who they should beat on top of that and beating them soundly. They're really playing fluid together. The chemistry is there and it is really great to watch. And I think that they can keep this going against Tottenham. I think this game will be extremely close. Conte is going to set up shop. It's going to be a very close game, but the fact that it's at the Emirates, I think gives them that little bit of boost to maybe pull out a 2-1 win to kick off week 9 in the Premier League. Happy to have it back. All right, Brentford traveling to the South Coast to take on Bournemouth. 2 wins, 2 draws to start the season. I don't think they would have this until maybe Christmas. I'm shocked by their performance. We see that 71% have Brentford winning this game, and I think rightfully so. We have been very Brentford's been surprising this season, but fun to watch. Usually at home, they just came off that battering against Arsenal 3-0. So hopefully they can put the pieces back together, travel down to Bournemouth after that long international break, and pick up all 3 points. Congratulations to Ivan Toney getting the call up during this international break for England. Well deserved to him. I think he takes that energy and gets on the score sheet and takes 3 points back with Brentford. Chelsea haven't played since September 14th. 2 postponements and only 2 games, both of which two out of the 3 games in the whole month of September were in the Champions League. Only 1 Premier League game that controversial to many for some reason. I still don't understand that. A win against West Ham there at the Bridge. We now travel to Selhurst Park to take on Crystal Palace. Graham Potter's first away game, first Premier League game as manager of Chelsea. Yes, it seemed like forever ago that Chelsea played, and it seems like even longer that Thomas Tuchel was the manager, but we still haven't even seen Graham Potter coach a Premier League game with Chelsea. I am not as high on the 90% that have Chelsea picking up all 3 points. I think it's been good to get the time off to work, to implement the ideas that Potter has had with the few players that were left at Cobham, the Chelsea training ground, and not going on international duty. But with Patrick Vieira and the way that Crystal Palace set up and the lack of continuity and cohesive structure that Chelsea have had to start this season, I don't see anything but a draw. We know Chelsea concede late in games, so even if Chelsea can get off to a good start, Crystal Palace can definitely battle back with the structure that they have. They know what they're doing. They have a game plan, and I think that this one ends in a draw. All right, Newcastle traveling on the road again with their 5 draws. They just cannot seem to get over the line and get the win, but they have battled back in many games as well, and they will travel to Fulham, who find themselves after 7 games in the top 6 of the Premier League, 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. And as you can see here, 35%, 33 and 32, and I think that says it all for this one. I think it is going to be a great game to watch, close. I think it will be high scoring. These teams are going to be energized, ready to go. And I'm going to give Newcastle to finally pick up their second win after all of their draws recently and pick up all 3 points. Liverpool, is this the break, the reset that they've been needing after their 2-3-1 start to the season? Can they finally put it all together and get clicking like we know they can at home to Brighton, who will have their first Premier League game without Graham Potter in charge? I think that Liverpool will 4 wins on the season. Absolutely incredible start for Brighton. But I think Liverpool take all 3 points there at Anfield. Everton 1-4-2, picking up their first win of the season. Travel to Southampton to take on the Saints, who have really, after that poor start, kind of put together some structure and seem like they might be on the up and up, back to where they usually are, that mid-table caliber team. Except this time they're extremely young. So let's see if they can keep that going. For me, I have a draw in this one. I think it'll be a great game overall. A lot of back and forth, but I think the points will be shared. Wolves take their lack of scoring but great defense to the London Stadium, take on West Ham, who have had a terrible start to the season, but maybe this break is the break that they needed to pick up all 3 points. I think they will. Wolves always tough to break down. We'll see if Diego Costa gets on the field for Wolves after being registered right before the international break, after his paperwork went through. Back in the Premier League for Mr. Diego Costa. Let's see what he can do at Wolves. Sunday, the Manchester Derby. Manchester United, we'll see who's going to be starting with the injuries that they have and the people that they've been, Ronaldo has been on the bench of late. Maguire has been on the bench, even though he did play for England and, gave away that penalty early against Germany. We'll see who comes back into the squad as they travel to the Etihad to take on Erling Haaland and undefeated Manchester City. 5 wins, 2 draws to start the campaign for Pep Guardiola and his crew. I don't see anything but a Manchester City win in this one. Just too strong, too powerful, and too much quality for Manchester United to handle with Erling Haaland. I think is going to be a different animal than any of the teams that United have seen so far, even playing the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal. Haaland is just a different animal for the likes of Varane and Martinez to cope with. And I think Manchester City pick up all 3 points this weekend. Aston Villa traveling to Leeds. Brandon Aronson, Tyler Adams. We'll see if Tyler Adams, I think had a good international break. I think he continues that. I think he is probably, of the United States players, the player who's playing the most consistently and at the highest level, probably of the entire squad going into Qatar. I hope he can keep that up, as Aston Villa have looked to rebound 2 wins now on the season to try and pick up where they left off last year and kind of rise up the table under Stevie G. But for me, this one's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to go for a draw on this one too, just because I think that both these teams are going to be energized, ready to go, fighting for everything. And I think that that's going to lead to a exciting draw in that one. Nottingham Forest travel to Leicester. Leicester still without a win. Nottingham Forest, no wins away from home this year. All losses except for the one draw was against Everton. And I just think that Leicester City has to get a win at some point, and that will be sadly against Dean Henderson and Nottingham Forest away or at home for Leicester at the King Power. And that game is on Monday. And there we go. We have all 10 picks made for week 9 of the Premier League season. We do all our picks here at the webcast on ESPN Pick'em. So go ahead and make your account if you haven't already. Get your picks in for week 9 this Saturday for game Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and see how you rank against us. We take our 32-25 record into week 9. We cracked the top 2,000 here on ESPN, and we look to continue that hopefully with these picks this week. And we do all of our picks for NFL, the upcoming NFL season or week on Tuesday at 7 p.m. and college football on Friday at 7 p.m. So please stick with us this Friday as we do college football, as we get into the second week of conference play, week 5 overall in that season. It seemed like it just kicked off, but we are already getting into the meat of the season there in college football. So come and join us at 7 p.m. for that one. And next Tuesday for the NFL, and back here to see how we did on the Premier League picks. All right. Yeah, we got the new graphic here with Graham Potter inserted here in the top 6. Let us know who you think is doing the best job, whether that is Conte at Spurs, Klopp at Liverpool, Pep at Man City, Arteta with Arsenal, Potter. You can even include his start with 6 games with Brighton if you would like, and Ten Hag at Manchester United after turning that ship around after the poor start to the season. Let us know in the comments who you think is doing the best job. And all the artwork is done by Smiley Sports Artwork on Instagram. Go check her page out. It's in the description below. And come back and join us 7 p.m. on Friday for college football picks. For everyone at the webcast, we will see you then.